Hello guys, I hope we're okay. We are on week 6 now of the Prayers with Jesus, and we are looking at Matthew this week. We are in Matthew 11 verses 25 to 26, and we are looking at Jesus praying with thanks so that everyone can know him. Before this happens, the verse where we're up to, Jesus has been going around and performing miracles and healing the sick and spending a lot of time with his disciples and going to different towns and performing all these wonders and miracles and kind of teaching his close disciples as well about God and who he is and why Jesus is so important. And when we read the same story but in Luke, we see that Jesus sends out his apostles or disciples, depending on which version you read, and he gives them authority to perform miracles as well, in the aim that it will obviously share Jesus and share God with the people in the towns that he sends them out to. He gives quite clear instructions on what they should do and how they should behave, and sends them out, and he trusts them to do the work and build God's kingdom. And he asks them to let people know that God's kingdom is coming soon. And when they come back to him and report on kind of how it's going and what's happened, actually they come back, and instead of focusing on the great things that God had given, God had done and through them, it was kind of all about what they had done, and the fact that because they used Jesus's name, they were able to cast out demons. And I imagine that Jesus felt, pretty disappointed at this point, pretty frustrated even, that he'd spent so long with them and really gave them kind of clear instructions on how to behave, and that they knew Jesus and he'd been talking to them about God and God's kingdom coming and what their role was on earth, what to do. And they came back, and when you read it, it feels like they kind of missed the point. It feels like they just came back and it was all about them, and weren't they amazing that they cast out demons. And I know probably we're all guilty of similar things and similar attitudes, and we kind of forget that actually all that we do and all that we're given and every opportunity and everything we do for others, and it's by God's grace and goodness, and it's him working through us that we're able to do these things. And the disciples had forgotten that as well. And so Jesus goes on to kind of denounced the towns where he had performed miracles because they hadn't repented of their sins. And it was kind of in the midst of Jesus in that place and feeling that way that we get the verse that we're up to in this week's message. And when Jesus prays to God, in some versions it says that he burst out in prayer. And it just made me think, sometimes when there's a lot going on and disappointment and frustration and all sorts going on, it can be that inner feeling within our soul that the only thing we want to do is cry out to God and burst out in prayer and speak to him about it. And that's exactly what Jesus did. And he addressed God and he thanked God. The first thing he did was he thanked God, and he called him Father. He called him, that it really shows that close relationship that Jesus had with him, to be able to thank his Father, the relationship that he had. And it just amazes me. And Jesus is always the perfect example of how we should act, that his first thing is to set the example to us to thank God and how to thank God, and to not lose sight of him in everything that's going on, but actually it's all for him, it's all for his kingdom, and that we should do exactly the same. And just reminds me that when we thank God despite our feelings or our circumstances, when we choose to obey the will of God, when we choose to thank him despite everything going on, despite people letting us down, despite things not happening how we maybe thought that they would or they should, when we choose to obey God in those moments, when we choose to thank him and give him praise and give him glory, not because of anything that we are getting as a consequence or only thanking him when it's good, but just because of who God is and that he sent Jesus and just everything he's done for us. When we just realize who he is and we thank him for that, it just completely changes everything, and it shifts our focus, and it kind of allows us to experience more of God in those moments, more of his grace, more of his kindness, more of his patience, and in turn we can then kind of outsource that into everyone and everything that we do around us, because it's all because of God working through us that we can look like Jesus. That's the only way we can treat people different. That's the only way we can be different, is God working through us. And when we choose to obey him, when we choose to thank him, that is kind of what happens. And he then, after he thanks him, he specifically thanks him for I can't remember exactly the phrasing without reading it, but he kind of thanks him that it's not people who think they're clever or they know everything that have access to God, but actually he thanks God that things are hidden from people who think that they know it all and they're super clever, and actually it's people with a childlike faith that God is able to use. And it just really highlights that we all have access to God. Anybody, no matter their background, no matter their bank account, no matter their circumstances, no matter their job, no matter their upbringing, no matter where they maybe feel that they are at the minute, that everybody can know God, that you don't have to have a degree, or you don't have to have it all figured out, or you don't have to be super intelligent, or you don't have to have a bad attitude and think that you are amazing for all the things you are doing, but actually that all of us have that access to God, and all of us can know God. All of us can know God and call him Father like Jesus did. All of us can obey God and experience more of his goodness and his faithfulness and his love. And I guess that's kind of my thoughts when I was looking at this passage and what was going on before and afterwards as well. So I would recommend in your own time this week that you read the chapters before Matthew 11, 25 and 26, and also maybe read the account in Luke as well, and have a think about it in the context of us knowing God and us thanking God, and it shifting our focus and us being able to let him use us and let him work through us for his glory, for his kingdom that is coming soon. And I just guess as we pray for the next 5 minutes, maybe take the time to thank God, not for what you have, not for what's going on at the minute, but just thank him for who he is. Thank him for his love and his goodness, and sit in the quiet and let him talk with you and listen to what he's got to say as you sit in his presence and in that grateful heart attitude, and just spend that 5 minutes with him, and maybe make some more time this week to sit and do the same and just thank him for who he is and spend that time with him.